Achewillow, Season 4, Chapter 7, The Opposite of Patience. Slow and careful, I put each pastry back into the display. Truth be told, every single cookie, cake, pastry, and strudel in this box came very close to ending their tasty existence spilled out on the street. I'd never waste food where I could avoid it, but sometimes circumstances get the better of us and we do rash things. In this case, it would have been to toss the box to the ground in frustration. Or is it frustration? It's some flavor of anger, that I know, but I don't so much feel at my wit's end as I feel betrayed. But even that comes short of what it is that's bubbling up from my gut. Are we supposed to put food back if we've taken it out of the display? Stefan asks, eliciting but the most subtle twitch of my lips. I make these snacks with my own 2 hands. Some I shape into balls between my palms before putting them in the oven. Others I knead between my fingers. I've touched these pastries and cookies before. I obsessively wash my hands before manipulating any and every food item, and here I use a piece of wax paper. I'm not just some random unwashed barista at the local commercial coffee shop serving machine-fabricated food. I am the progenitor of these confections and culinary pieces of art. There is no touch that would be applied with more care. Are we supposed to put food back after being packaged? Maybe not, but I'll be the judge of whether this rule should apply to me in my own cafe. It's fine, I answer, biting back everything else going through my mind. I'm being careful. It's not enough to convince him, though. Not that Stefan is about to try and discipline me. He's got customers waiting for him at the register and has far too great a respect for the hierarchy of the workplace to step out of line. That doesn't stop him from looking down at me as I crouch, putting back used pastries into the display. "You look upset," I hear Annabelle chime in, soon followed by the loud slap of a book cover being closed. Like a hag pulling herself from the depth of the swamp, I rise from behind the counter to see my friend putting away books and pens and notepads. Annabelle is one of the most colorful acquaintances I've made since moving to Achewillow. She's a window into what my life maybe could have been. Barely a year or 2 younger than I am, she's a passionate student, obsessed with her dreams of working in some kind of scientific field. She teeters between medicine and some branch of zoology, but life sciences are where her heart is. Which makes it all the more surprising that, hidden between her books on anatomy and chemistry and the vast collection of colorful pens and highlighters, I spot a book on mixology. Not one of those cocktails for parties compendium of amateur drink recipes either. This looks as official as any one of the college-level textbooks stuffed into her green denim backpack. I make a note. It's been a challenging morning, I say, careful on the emphasis I put on challenging. Want to talk about it? Annabelle puts her bag down on the floor beside her, leans over the counter, and pushes her empty coffee mug in my direction. I take her mug and refill it from the pot. A quick glance at the antique coffee machine, and I know it's the one responsible for the brew everyone is enjoying this afternoon. Even at his most distraught, Stefan is able to operate the evil contraption, whereas I remain wary. I let my eyes wander, taking stock of who's in the dining room and who isn't. Mid-afternoon is usually a light crowd. Enough people to keep us busy, but nothing that might be considered a rush. Half the tables are full, most with high school and college students, a few with the self-employed who come here to take a break and get some work done. I even spot a couple of cops from the local precinct enjoying a cup in the corner near the window. Makes me wonder if Stefan is right that Lamore is having him followed. I was hoping to see Detective Wilson in the crowd, or maybe Helen Edna, notary public, though that would have been unlikely. Helen doesn't step out of the office inside of business hours, not without excellent reasons to do so. I just saw Gulliver kissing Ophelia. Dropping the words on the counter that separates us doesn't have the impact I anticipated. There's no clattering of dishes or loud scratching of records. The dining room doesn't suddenly go quiet, with only the sound of a dozen necks turning in my direction. The best I can get out of Annabelle is a somewhat deflated, "Oh, wow." Then again, now that I say it out loud, putting the words to sound instead of letting them echo in my head over the image of the actual event, they do seem far less interesting. They lack the spice and seasoning that I'd built up in my own mind. Not that the facts burn any less in my gut, but I realize that they aren't the earth-shattering revelations I dragged all the way back with me from Pearls of Wisdom. Like our Gulliver? Tall, black truck guy that looks like he's grown from one of Terry Crews's toenail clippings? I scowl, perhaps as a way to keep myself from laughing. Yes, of all the many Gullivers in our immediate social circle, that is the one I'm talking about. She laughs, and it's a more welcome sound than I expected. Few people I know wield levity the way Annabelle does. As a weapon if necessary, but mostly as a balm to ease discomfort. "So," she says after recovering, "tell me why that bothers you so much." Here we go. It doesn't bother me, I start, but fail to find more to add. Annabelle, who'd been in the middle of a sip of coffee, pulls the mug from her lip to wave it around, threatening to spill coffee everywhere. "It does," she blurts out, words wet with half-swallowed coffee. "I'm not saying it means anything, but you have to start by admitting that it bothers you." A quick look confirms that Stefan isn't listening, or if he is, the subject holds no interest for him. It's not like there aren't more important things weighing on his shoulders right now anyways. I'm not jealous. Your word, not mine. Fine, I start over. I'm angry. I've never thought of Gulliver in any other way than as a friend. He's like a dumber but more resourceful version of my brother. And even as far as guys go, he's not even remotely my type. I like guys who are, I don't know, more bookish, I guess. Gulliver's smarter and better read than he looks, but it's impossible to have a conversation with him about that sort of thing. But when I saw him all shirtless and sweaty, planting a kiss on Ophelia, of all people, it made me angry. Annabelle, who's already got a rosy tint under her blonde hair, grows a few shades darker before hiding behind her coffee mug. I can see her cheeks rise as a smile bullies itself onto her features. "I think," she says, struggling with her voice, "I think that to better address your anger, we need to take a moment and further explore how shirtless and sweaty Gulliver actually was." Is, I correct. No reason to assume he's done moving boxes, especially if he keeps interrupting himself. To her credit, Annabelle shows enough decorum to only give the door a quick glance instead of rushing out to confirm what I'm saying. "You know," I continue, "if you're that thirsty, I can get you some water or a bottle of juice." No, it's fine. We're talking about you anyway. You and your anger, which I'm going to go out on a limb and assume isn't about Gulliver. It's not, I muse quietly while considering my reply. In any other circumstances, I would be happy for Gulliver. At least, I want to think I'm a good enough friend that I'd be glad for him. It is, but only a little, I answer, reaching down into the display to grab a croissant. Gulliver can take care of himself. At least, I hope he can. So there's no reason to think Ophelia's going to hurt him. It's just that 3 days ago, there was no Ophelia, and now she's everywhere and into everything. I nod, breaking off a small piece of my croissant and putting it in my mouth. Okay, Annabelle continues, breaking off her own piece of my croissant. Let's explore a counterpoint. Until last fall, I was nobody to you. You were not nobody. I was, and that's fine. You can't be buddies with everyone in your cafe. But almost overnight, I'm up in your business. I'm at the Donselites. I'm in your investigation. I'm leafing through your aunt's recipe book. Now I'm here every single day, eavesdropping on your conversations with your gang. What makes Ophelia different from that? Because, I think, in Annabelle's direction, you're not solving my problems with Gary Remington. You're not starting a business down the street with a bunch of great ideas I should have thought of months ago. You're not smooching one of my first and best friends from town. Next thing I know, Ophelia will figure out who killed Nancy Tripoli, or she'll make mittens for the cloud worshippers and they won't need my croissants anymore. Annabelle isn't a problem because she's not a better, more successful version of me that's threatening to take my place. It's easy to be happy for Annabelle because I don't want what she has. There's a word for how I feel about Ophelia. Envy. Am I a bad person? I ask. I've been sitting in Achewillow Border Park for a couple of hours now, watching as the night fog builds up over the humid grass. I gave Stefan a key to my apartment, and he took off early to get a few essentials from his. I sit alone, as is my habit, watching the park come alive with the strange social ecology that is unique to this place. Watching the subtle and bizarre interactions of these night denizens, I feel a certain kinship to marine biologists stumbling onto new and exciting biospheres. Every shape is recognizable, but subtle differences and the absolute alien nature of the interactions are what make it worthy of study. I guess you're probably not the best person to ask. Alone might be a stretch. I do have my little bird cage with me. Annabelle is going to be taking the macaron sprite off my hands, at least for a few days, while I entertain a new roommate. I don't want to have to explain to Stefan, of all people, why I have a fairy locked up in my apartment. I do get a reply, in the form of a shy cooing from under the birdcage cover. A generous interpretation would be that it's meant to reassure me on my moral quandary. But just as likely, the macaron sprite simply wants to be let out of its confines. Soon, I reassure, once your wing is better. And once I have a better understanding of how to safely dispose of a fairy. Nothing in the Dufour recipe book on that subject. You're generous with your time. The voice came out of nowhere, and I thought for a second that I was going to lose my hair out of fright. No one speaks in Achewillow Border Park. The closest one might come to talking is the singing of the tall man and the gibberish of the albino bats, which are conspicuously absent tonight. I'm sorry? I ask the stranger. How he came this close enough to sit on my bench opposite the birdcage, I do not know. The way he's dressed, white pants with a white hoodie pulled over his head, he might as well be glowing. Yet he snuck up over gravel without a sound, sat on a creaky wooden bench in absolute silence, and has been sitting there mother knows how long without the macaron sprite throwing a fit. You were asking if you were a good person, he gestures to the birdcage. And I was pointing out that you are very generous with your time. He turns to face me, and I notice that despite a voice that holds the tenor of a man nearing retirement, the stranger doesn't look a year older than I am. Blonde hair and gray eyes with pale skin, he reminds me of a vanilla cake with vanilla frosting. Not many would take a pet bird out to the park at night. His words are slow and kind. I can almost feel him reaching in to caress my soul, something that usually requires a challenging recipe or a particularly slow-cooked meal to achieve. Still, a residual fear buzzes at the back of my brain. There's a piece of metal hidden in that vanilla cake, and woe to whoever bites into it. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. Have we met? I come to Achewillow Border Park to be alone. It's part of the unspoken ethos of the park that we all keep to our own strange business. If the bizarre and wonderful is Achewillow's blood, then the park is its heart. All blood must pass by here at some point. I can see them from the corner of my eye. The woman with the stroller, the butterfly hunter, the tall man, all of them have stopped whatever it is they're doing to watch our interaction. This is all very irregular. Patience, the stranger replies. No, I say, feeling my patience leaking out of me. I'm not playing this game. I reach to take my birdcage and leave, the muscles in my calf strain, ready to pull me to my feet so I can walk out of the fog and exit the dream. That's my name, he says, for the first time a sense of urgency in his voice. My name is Patience. He extends a hand for me to shake. I don't know why I expected long, bony fingers, but instead his hand is the portrait of normal, if maybe a little pale. There are rings on almost all of his fingers, but they look like costume jewelry, akin to what my goth friends wore in college. Settling back down, I take his hand in mine and we shake slowly. Over the course of almost 10 seconds, a smile draws itself on his lips before he lets go. 10 seconds might not seem long, but when holding the hand of a stranger in a dark park at night in complete silence, it's an eternity. Thank you, I say, letting my back settle on the park bench once more. For saying I'm generous with my time, that is. Think nothing of it. I'm just pointing out facts. So why are you asking a bird if it thinks you're a good person? And I almost tell him. Just like that, given a door to walk through, I damn near put my foot through the threshold. In Achewillow, of all places. The whole story of my jealousy towards Ophelia, my desire to have the things she has and do the things she does. I want to take the needles of my breath and tongue and knit for this person I've never met, this patience, the story of my, how did Annabelle put it? My envy. That's too personal, I explain, trying to remain polite. I'd rather keep it between me and my bird. He leans forward, putting his elbows on his knees and twisting his chest to look at me. His eyes grow kind and his lips tight. I can't read him, being the stranger he is, and I'm not sure what to make of him, but I don't feel entirely comfortable in his presence. Fair enough, he says after a moment. Do you mind if I ask you, however, which Dufour woman you are? For a second, I'm taken aback. How did he know I'm a Dufour? But then I realize that I'm still wearing my apron, and that the Achewillow Cafe has been owned and operated, in one form or another, by Dufour women for decades, if not centuries. Miriam, I'm Doris's great-grandniece. Gray eyes grow wide, turning almost completely white in the process. He looks more than surprised at the revelation. Shocked would be a good word. Miriam? You expecting someone else? Actually, I was, he says, gaining his composure enough to lean back on the park bench. I thought Annette had inherited from Doris. Thrill is one of those things that we fall short of analyzing properly. It's a beautiful emotion and probably one of the closest to heat in cooking. Have you ever asked yourself why you'd subject yourself to physical pain just for an added kick of flavor? Thrill is the same thing. We accept uncertainty for the promise of something memorable, and the very anticipation is both torture and pleasure. Speaking with patience is thrilling. The question of what he knows and how he knows, it gnaws at me like a piranha at my flesh. I'm afraid of what it means when someone talks about the Dufour heritage with this kind of authority, and the hair raises on the back of my neck whenever my ancestors are mentioned. I thirst to know more, but fear to wade deeper in those waters, lest it attract more hungry fishes. But he's not talking about my ancestors. He's talking about Cousin Annette. Meek, little Cousin Annette, who's not even a Dufour by blood, but by marriage. Officially, Annette is the wife of Pierre Jules, who's my first cousin twice removed. Unlike me, Annette is not a child, and it's a little weird that this young man would even know who she is. Except Annette was one of the names on the papers I received from Helen Edna. She is in the line of succession for the cafe, but she turned it down, which I guess wasn't part of the plan. Annette must be close to 70 years old and well into her retirement, I explain, as if this were a normal conversation. I don't think she would have enjoyed taking care of a cafe, especially not one as busy as the Achewillow. Patience weaves his fingers together, couching his chin on his knuckles. I put a hand on top of my bird cage, debating if this is my cue to leave, hoping that perhaps this bizarre interaction is finally at an end when Patience speaks up one last time. I suppose, he mumbles without turning to face me, that perhaps Doris did live a little too long. And it is with these words, a chill threat leveled at someone already long gone, that I decide to take my leave from Achewillow Border Park. Maybe I'll give it a few weeks before I come back. Muscles tense and synapse afire, I try to walk the couple of blocks from the park to my apartment. With any luck, Stefan will be asleep when I get there, and I can sneak the macaron sprite back into my bedroom without notice. Push comes to shove, the cage is covered, and I doubt Stefan will be one to pry. At worst, I'll have to make up a story about having a bird. I think I can manage that. While sleep has been a little on the light side this week, what with seeing a dead body and the increasing high weirdness of the park, not to mention my simmering hatred of Ophelia, I'm looking forward to putting my head on a pillow, even if it's just to listen to my thoughts echo through my skull for an hour or two. Such things, however, like a cozy stew, demand that you wait before savoring them. Those are my thoughts as I try not to hurry home. The encounter with Patience rattled me. More than that, being rattled angers me. And just to prove to myself, and whatever uncaring God might watch down from the clouds, that I'm not afraid, I walk slowly. In fact, I walk so slowly I'm positively strolling down Rue Principale. Who am I kidding, though? I'm terrified, and every moment by which I stretch the walk home is a moment I feel I'm taking off my own life. Fancy meeting you here. I don't know which scares me most in the moment, the voice that cuts through the fog and night behind me, or the sound of the bird cage as it hits the ground like a broken bell. Oh no, the voice calls out again, the edge taken out of it by clarity. I turn, clutching my chest, fingers digging into the collar of my sage green apron. My knees bend with the effort of keeping me up, and my hand shakes in painful bursts, like the shock echoing through my knuckles. A ghost of pale aged pink and denim blues rushes to me, but gives its attention to my dropped parcel. The birdcage landed hard, but remained upright. Angry cooing filters through the cover, expressing outrage at the sudden fall. I'm so sorry. Sweet and compassionate words plead their apology. Is it okay? It's Vicky Paramore, kneeling next to the cage but looking up at me, eyes wide with regret. Manicured fingers put her purse down as she fumbles with the cloth over the cage, hurried to see if the presumed bird within is wounded. I drop down to my own knees, painfully cracking the right one on the concrete pavement. Let me check. With tremendous restraint, I gently pull her hand away from the cage, making sure to pull the covering up at an angle that would obscure the precious cargo. For once, the night favors me. Under the orange streetlights, the mysterious contents of the birdcage remain shadowed and hidden. Only two golden eyes stare back through the bars, glaring their indignation into me. She's fine, I guess out loud. Just a bit rattled is all. I can't know that to be true. My only basis of assumption is that if the macaron sprite is healthy enough to be angry, then it can't be hurt that bad. Besides, and I don't want to appear callous, but I did see this creature and its brethren attempt to eat a man alive. I have compassion for the sprite, I do, but maybe some residual anger. You don't caramelize onions without the kitchen smelling for a few days. Glad to hear it, Vicky says without so much as a drop of doubt. Glad of it myself. I pick myself up from the ground, taking the cage along with me. Vicky stands, taking too long to break eye contact with me as she does, still smiling. You know, she says, you can probably let go of my hand now. My fingers leap away from hers like her skin has suddenly become electric. Whatever you've got in there, she adds, it stays your secret. And like that, I went from rattled and angry to flustered and embarrassed. It's a rare bird, I mutter too fast. I'm keeping it for a friend. I don't want it to wake up. Somehow, I managed to stop myself. The way excuses started to spill out of my mouth, I might as well have been a tipped-over bottle of wine. It's fine. We're in Achewillow. We all have secrets. I'm reminded, for a second, of a conversation I had with Helen Edna, Notary Public, almost a year ago. I was complaining about feeling like there was no one I could rely on. No one I could go to with all of the bizarre and unearthly responsibilities that came with the Achewillow Cafe. During my first week of cooking school, I dropped an entire bottle of extra virgin olive oil on the ground. Not the typical 750 ml bottle you find in a domestic kitchen, but one twice as big. Because this was a cooking school, we didn't settle for the brands that sold their oil in metal cans or plastic jugs. When the bottle hit the tiled floor, It shattered with a noise I'd never heard before and one I've yet to hear again. The thickness of the oil made the breaking of glass feel slower, more labored. The sound was swallowed by viscosity, and even the glass shards slid soundlessly on the ceramic, cushioned by the oil. It took hours to clean just the first half of the spill. The oil was everywhere, and for a liquid so slick, it stuck to everything. As other students trickled in, they lent a hand. By the time the entire class was on its hands and knees, scrubbing their skin raw with industrial degreasers, the spill was disappearing almost as fast as it had occurred. That incident and the conversation with Helen highlighted to me the importance of seeking help, a lesson I struggle every day to learn and learn again. But that's not what strikes me about this conversation. There's another parallel with what Helen and I talked about that day. How everyone in Achewillow, everyone anywhere really, has their own little story. Maybe they're not all as insane, featuring immortal raccoons and lust demons, but perhaps also not that different. I look up, pursing my lips together in a parody of a smile. There it is, floating placidly in the night sky. The ever-present cloud that the local Pilvist cult worship is barely visible, only cut from the sky by the light it reflects from Achewillow. I guess so, I reply after a long pause. What's yours? Mortified. I am mortified by what I just did and asked. What is your agenda here, Miriam? The knuckles on my left hand, the one holding the cage, crack audibly in the night, but I can barely perceive the strain I'm putting on my joints. I try to salvage the situation. What are you doing out so late? Her face breaks apart with one of the most sincere and excited smiles I've seen a human being pull off in a long time. Vicky has overly expressive features, and showing teeth is second nature to her. All part of being an actress, or aspiring actress, I suppose. But this is the difference between a photo of a sunset and staring at the sun straight on. Good thing it's the middle of the night, lest she blind me with those pearly whites. I'm so glad you asked, she beams. I couldn't sleep. I had to work out some of the excitement, and the only gym in town is closed, of course. I wanted to go for a run, but my running shirts are in the wash. The best I could do was a walk, and then I saw you. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. And she's about to explode. Whatever it is that got her so excited is bubbling inside her like she's a pressure cooker set to high. Anyway, she continues after gathering herself, I got it. I got the job. Judging by the energy behind every one of her words, I doubt she's talking about being a clerk at an insurance company or, God forbid, a barista. A role? Yes. I have to leave for Toronto in 2 days for a fitting, but yes, it's a small role, but it has lines. It's all nonsense to me. I don't know the first thing about acting, and while I hung out with a few of the theater kids in CJEP, I could never get on their level of energy. Give me a quiet kitchen with the soothing voice of a simmering sauce bubbling on the stove any day. That's incredible. I struggle to match her enthusiasm. She stares silently at me with her Stepford Wives smile. I swear, if she keeps this up, she'll pull a muscle. It's okay, she says, losing not even an inch of enthusiasm. You don't need to get it, but trust me, it's a big deal. At least it is to me. I don't know how you react to near strangers and vague acquaintances dumping all their feelings over you, but I tend to fall back on my most primal of reflexes, fight or flight. Now, I'm obviously not going to punch Vicky in her pretty little face, so that leaves me with the ungrateful act of trying to flee. That's really great, I stammer. I am super happy for you. I'm sorry if I'm not jumping up and down. It's just very late, and I wake up in about 5 hours to prepare food for the breakfast crowd, and I trail off. My words have no effect on her. She keeps staring, smiling, and pretty much glowing with pure, unfettered joy. No problem. We can celebrate tomorrow. I'm sorry, what? Look, she says, her grin finally succumbing to either strain or doubt. I need to celebrate this. Have a fancy dinner, put away a few drinks, something to highlight this. And you want to do that with me? the subtext being that we hardly know each other. She's a customer. I'm her barista. We trade pleasantries about the weather, and I look at her, envying her sense of style and natural poise. We aren't drinking buddies. But as in any small town, sharing the streets of Achewillow does afford some level of familiarity, doesn't it? Yes, I owe you for the scare and almost killing your bird. I stare, not sure what I'm supposed to do with this. I think back on the last few days. Dead bodies? Check. Personal failures? Check. Traumatized employee? Check. Don't I deserve this? To treat myself to a nice meal and a few drinks with a stranger talking my ear off about whatever they're passionate about? Sure, why not? Achewillow is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Achewillow to donate. Achewillow has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Achewillow for details. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Achewillow.